The next sutta is 8.79. The Buddha said, monks, these 8 conditions in a monk when training lead to failure. What 8? Delight in work, delight in gossip, delight in sleeping, delight in society, having the senses unguarded, immoderation in eating, delight in association, and delight in diffuseness or proliferation of thinking. Monks, these are the 8 conditions. And the converse conditions lead to success. What are these 8 conditions? We reflect again. The first one is delight in work. That means too much work, because if a monk has got too much work, then it's difficult to maintain his concentration, his mindfulness, etc. And work sometimes might be justified, but then the Buddha said, even if work is justified, a monk is advised to spend a certain time in work and to spend a certain time in his meditation. Sometimes if a monk is too involved in work, then he loses his mindfulness and his concentration. The second one is delight in gossip or idle talk. Third one, delight in sleeping. And then the fourth one, delight in society. That means liking to stay in a place with many people. Then the next one, having the senses unguarded, not guarding the sense doors. Then the next one, immoderation in eating. Then the next one, delight in association. Delight in association means always liking to contact other people, to engage other people in conversation instead of being aloof. And then the last one, delight in diffuseness or proliferation of thinking, using the thinking mind. Using the thinking mind, that's an obstacle to meditation. The next sutta is 8.8.80. Monks, there are these 8 bases of indolence. What 8? Herein, monks, a monk has to do some work, and he thinks, there's some work for me to do, but the doing of it will tire me physically. Well, I'll lie down. And he lies down without putting forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. This is the first basis of indolence. Or he has done some work and thinks that he is tired and lies down without putting forth energy. This is the second basis of indolence. Or he has to make a journey and thinks that it will tire him and he lies down without putting forth energy. This is the third basis. Or he has made a journey and thinks that he is tired and he lies down without putting forth energy. This is the fourth basis. Or wandering for alms through village or town and not getting enough coarse or dainty fare for his needs. He thinks, I've wandered for alms through village and town and have not gotten enough coarse or dainty fare for my needs. My body is tired and unpliable. Well, I'll lie down. And he does so without putting forth energy. This is the fifth basis. Or getting enough, and he thinks that his body is heavy and unpliable, like a load of soaked beans, and he lies down without putting forth energy. This is the sixth basis. Or there arises some slight illness in the monk, and he thinks, this slight illness has arisen. There is good reason to lie down. Well, I'll lie down. And he lies down without putting forth energy. This is the seventh basis. Again, monks, a monk has recovered from some ailment, has arisen recently from sickness and things. I've recovered from that ailment. I'm recently arisen from sickness and my body is weak and unpliable. Well, I'll lie down. And he lies down without putting forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. This is the eighth basis of indolence. Verily, monks, these are the 8 bases of indolence. Monks, these are the 8 bases of energy. What 8? Herein, monks, there is some work to be done by a monk, and he thinks, there's some work for me to do, but if I do it, not easy will it be to fix my mind on the Buddha's message. Well, I provide for that and put forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. And he puts forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. This, monks, is the first basis of energy. Or he has done some work and thinks that he has been unable to fix his mind on the Buddha's message, so should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the second basis. Or he has to make a journey and thinks that it will not be easy to fix his mind on the Buddha's message, so should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the third basis. Or he has made a journey and thinks that he has been unable to fix his mind on the Buddha's message, so should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the fourth basis. Or wandering for alms through village or town and not getting his needs, he thinks that his body is buoyant and pliable, and that he should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the fifth basis. Or getting enough food, he thinks that his body is strong and pliable, and that he should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the sixth basis. Or there arises some slight illness in him, and he thinks that it is possible that his illness may grow worse, and that he should put forth energy to attain the unattained, and he does so. This is the seventh basis. Again, monks. A monk has recovered from some ailment, has arisen recently from sickness, and he thinks, I've recovered from that ailment, I'm recently arisen from sickness. It is possible that that ailment may return to me. Well, I'll provide for that and put forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. And he puts forth energy to attain the unattained, to master the unmastered, to realize the unrealized. This, monks, is the eighth basis of energy. Verily, monks, these are the 8 bases of energy. That's the end of the sutta. From this sutta, you can see the Buddha is advising his disciples to be very energetic in their practice. Even though they are tired, that they should practice instead of lying down. Even though they have just recovered from a sickness, they should practice instead of lying down, etc. And that shows the character of the Buddha. The Buddha himself had such a strong willpower that he did all these things, and that is why he became a Sammasambuddha. Most of us, we don't have that kind of inclination, so it's not possible for us to become a Sammasambuddha. The next sutta is 8.9.81. Monks, when mindfulness and awareness are lacking, conscientiousness and sense of remorse are caused to be destroyed. When conscientiousness and sense of remorse are lacking, the control of the senses is caused to be destroyed. When the control of the senses is lacking, moral practice, sila, is caused to be destroyed. When moral practice is lacking, right concentration is caused to be destroyed. When right concentration is lacking, seeing and knowing of things as they really are caused to be destroyed. When seeing and knowing of things as they really are lacking, weariness and dispassion are caused to be destroyed. When weariness and dispassion are lacking, seeing and knowing of liberation are caused to be destroyed. Monks, just as in the case of a tree which is devoid of branches and foliage, and the shoots thereof come not to maturity, nor the bark, nor the sapwood, nor the core, even so, monks, when mindfulness and awareness are lacking, conscientiousness and sense of remorse are caused to be destroyed. When conscientiousness and sense of remorse are lacking, control of the senses is caused to be destroyed, etc., etc. Monks, when mindfulness and awareness are present, conscientiousness and sense of remorse are caused to be complete. When conscientiousness and sense of remorse are present, the control of the senses is caused to be complete. When the control of the senses is present, moral practice is caused to be complete. When moral practice is present, right concentration is caused to be complete. When right concentration is present, seeing and knowing of things as they really are is caused to be complete. When seeing and knowing of things as they really are present, weariness and dispassion are caused to be complete. When weariness and dispassion are present, seeing and knowing liberation are caused to be complete. Monks, just as in the case of a tree possessing branches and foliage, the shoots thereof come to maturity, so likewise the bark, the sapwood and the core. Even so, monks, when mindfulness and awareness are present, conscientiousness and sense of remorse are caused to be complete, etc., etc. That's the end of the sutta. So here you can see liberation comes from several causes and conditions, and all these have to be present, and they are very systematic. One leads to another. You see, mindfulness and awareness leads to conscientiousness and sense of remorse, and conscientious and sense of remorse leads to control of the senses, and control of the senses leads to moral practice, and moral practice leads to right concentration, which leads to seeing and knowing of things as they really are, and that leads to weariness and dispassion. And weariness and dispassion leads to seeing and knowing liberation, liberation itself. Now of all these things, the important point to note, some of the important points to note is that moral practice leads to right concentration. Without sila, precepts, it's very difficult to get right concentration because the mind is disturbed with remorse. A person keeps sila, moral practice, he has no remorse to disturb his mind, so he easily gets into right concentration. And right concentration leads to seeing and knowing things as they really are. This is an important point. That is the purpose of right concentration, samadhi. Strong concentration is to get rid of the hindrances so that we can see things as they really are. Without strong concentration, it is impossible to see things as they really are. We only see things as they seem to us. And then seeing and knowing things as they really are leads to weariness and dispassion. Weariness is nibbida, I think, and dispassion is viraga. And when we are weary of the things in this world, we become dispassionate towards them. There's no more the passion for worldly things, and that leads to liberation. Now we come to Sutta number 8.9.82. Now the Venerable Punya paid a visit to the Exalted One and sat down at one side and said, Lord, what is the cause, what is the reason why sometimes it occurs to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma and sometimes it does not? Suppose Punya, a monk, is a believer but does not visit him. Then it does not occur to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma. But when a monk is a believer and visits the Tathagata, then it occurs to him to preach Dhamma. Or a monk is a believer and visits the Tathagata but does not sit down to listen, then it does not occur to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma. Or he sits down to listen but does not question the Tathagata. Or he questions the Tathagata but does not listen to Dhamma with attentive ear. Or he listens with attentive ear, but when he has heard it, does not bear Dhamma in mind. Or he bears what he has heard in mind, but does not examine the truth of the doctrines he has heard. Or he examines the truth of the doctrines, but walks not in conformity with Dhamma, though knowing both letter and spirit. Then it does not occur to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma. But when Punya, a monk, is a believer and visits the Tathagata, sits down to listen, questions the Tathagata, listens with attentive ear, bears what he has heard in mind, examines the truth of the doctrines heard, and knowing both the letter and the spirit, walks in conformity with Dhamma, then it occurs to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma. When these 8 conditions come to pass, punya, then it most occurs to the Tathagata to preach Dhamma. That's the end of the sutta. So from this sutta, we find that sometimes people come to visit the Buddha, sometimes he preaches Dhamma to them, and sometimes he does not. And these are the reasons he gives. Sometimes that person is not inclined to listen, or sometimes he listens but does not question the Buddha anymore, or he questions but does not listen with attentive ear, etc. And the Buddha taught that it is we should have reverence for the Dhamma, and a lay person especially has to show respect and be desiring to hear the Dhamma before the Dhamma is taught. Then we find in the Vinaya rules, the Buddha laid down that if a lay person sits higher than a monk, he is not to be taught the Dhamma, or he wears a hat, or he claps the knees, grasps the knees, or he carries a weapon, etc. Then the monk is not supposed to teach that person the Dhamma. In other words, the Dhamma is something that is invaluable, so we should show respect for it before it will be taught to us. The next sutta is 8.9.83. Monks, if wanderers of other views should question you thus, wherein, sirs, are all things rooted? What is their origin? What gives rise to all things? What is their confluence? What is their chief state? What is their master state? What is their further state? And of all things, what is most precious? Monks, thus questioned, how would you answer those wanderers of other views? Lord, our ideas have their foundation in the Exalted One. They are guided by the Exalted One and are protected by Him. Well, indeed, were it for us, if the Exalted One were to make clear the purpose of this speech, then on hearing it, the monks would bear it in mind. Wherefore, monks, listen, pay heed, I will speak. Yes, Lord, they replied. And the Exalted One said, if monks, wanderers of other views, should so question you, answer them thus. Reverend sirs, all things are rooted in desire. They have their origin in attention. Contact gives rise to them. Their confluence is feeling. Their chief state is concentration. Mindfulness is their master state. Wisdom their further state. And of all things, liberation is the most precious. Monks, thus questions, so should you answer. These things, I think you have to think about them, contemplate, to see the meaning, won't explain them. 8.9.86. Once the Exalted One, while wandering for alms with a great company of monks among the Kosalis, came to the Brahmin village called Ichanangala, belonging to them, and there he dwelt at Ichanangala wood. Now the Brahmin householders of Ichanangala heard the news. It is said that Master Gotama the Sakyan, a wanderer from the Sakyan clan, has arrived at Ichanangala and dwells in the wood nearby, and of that same Master Gotama this good repute is noised abroad. He is the Exalted One, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, etc. Well, indeed it is to see such Arahants. So at the end of that night, the Brahmin householders of Ichanangala, taking with them much hard and soft food, went to Ichanangala wood and waited outside the gateway, making there a great din and uproar. Now at that time the Venerable Nagita was the personal attendant of the Exalted One. Then the Exalted One called the Venerable Nagita and said, Who are these, Nagita, that make this great din and uproar? Just like fisher folk, it seems, with a great haul of fish. Lord, these are the Ichanangala Brahmin householders who wait outside the gateway. They have brought much hard and soft food for the use of the Exalted One and the monks of the Sangha. I have naught to do with homage, Nagita, nor has homage anything to do with me. Whosoever cannot obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, this happiness of renunciation, this happiness of seclusion, this happiness of calm, this happiness of awakening, which I can obtain at will, easily and without difficulty, let him enjoy that midden or dunghill of happiness, that dung-like happiness, that happiness gotten of gains, favours and flattery. Lord, let the Exalted One accept their offering. Let the welfarer accept. Now, Lord, is the time for the Blessed One to accept. For wheresoever the Exalted One shall now go, the Brahmin householders of town and country will be just as inclined to give. Lord, just as when the sky deva rains big drops, the water flows with the slope of the ground, even so, Lord, wheresoever the Exalted One shall now go, the Brahmin householders of town and country will be bent on making offerings. And why is that? It is, Lord, because of the virtue, wisdom and knowledge of the Exalted One. I have naught to do with homage, Nagita, nor has homage anything to do with me. Whosoever cannot obtain at will this happiness of renunciation, seclusion, calm and awakening which I can obtain, let him enjoy that midden or dunghill of happiness, that dung-like happiness, that happiness gotten of gains, favours and flattery. Some devas, Nagita, cannot obtain at will this happiness which I can obtain. Stop here for a moment to comment. This Venerable Nagita, before the Buddha took Venerable Ananda as his personal assistant, he had other assistants, and Venerable Nagita was one of them. But they did not stay long as the Buddha's assistant. Only later, when the Buddha chose the Venerable Ananda, and the Venerable Ananda was so devoted to the Buddha that he kept on as a pendant for the last, I think, about 20 or 25 years of the Buddha's life. So you find up to here that because these Brahmin householders came with offerings, but they made a lot of noise, and the Buddha was not happy. So the Buddha didn't want to see them. And this shows this is a part of the Buddha's personality, his character. He didn't like noise. And some books like to comment that the Buddha was so perfect that he did not show any personal of his past personal traits, characters. But in the suttas we find it is not quite so. The Buddha still had certain characteristics, certain traits of character. In one of the previous suttas, we had heard that the Buddha said that before his enlightenment he had 5 dreams. One of the dreams was that he walked on a hill of dung, meaning he likened the offerings of the requisites to dung or excrement, not to be soiled by them. So in the same way now, the Buddha said that he was not eager to accept the offerings of the Brahmin householders. And he said, if anybody who's eager to accept that type of happiness, which is to him like a shit-like happiness, they could do so. But the Buddha said he enjoyed the happiness of seclusion, the happiness of renunciation, the happiness of calm, the happiness of awakening. And this refers to the bliss of jhana. The bliss of jhana is called the happiness or the bliss of seclusion, the bliss of renunciation. Because, for example, before a person can enter the first jhana, he has to be secluded or aloof from sense desires. He has to be secluded or aloof from unwholesome states. Then only he can enter the jhana. So here, as in some other suttas, the Buddha encouraged indulgence in jhanic bliss. He did not find anything wrong with them, with the indulgence in jhanic bliss. In fact, in the sutta, the Buddha said there are 4 advantages to be gotten from indulging in the happiness of jhana, namely the fruit of sotapanna, Sakadagamin, Anagamin, and Arahanthood, the 4 stages of fruition of Aryan attainment. Now the Buddha continued, Nagita, when you are assembled and met together and live enjoying company, I think thus, surely these worthies cannot obtain at will, easily and without trouble, this happiness of renunciation, this happiness of seclusion, this happiness of calm, of awakening, which I can obtain. So these worthies meet and come together and live enjoying company. Or else I see monks joking and making merry by poking one another with their fingers. Then I think, surely these worthies cannot obtain at will this happiness of renunciation, etc., which I can obtain, since they joke and make merry by poking one another with their fingers. Or else I see monks, after eating as much as their bellies will hold, giving themselves over to the delight of bed, to the delight of languor, to the delight of torpor. Then I think, surely these worthies cannot obtain at will easily this happiness of renunciation, etc., which I can obtain. So they cram their bellies to the uttermost, and give themselves over to the delight of bed, languor and torpor. Or I see a monk living on the outskirts of some village, seated and composed, and I think, some park servant or novice will presently disturb this reverencer and will oust him from that concentration. So I am not pleased, Nagita, with that monk's abode lying on the outskirts of a village. Then I see a forest-dwelling monk seated, nodding in a forest, and then I think, presently, when this reverencer has got rid of this sleepiness, this lethargy, he will surely ponder on loneliness, making the forest his field of perception. So I am pleased, Nagita, by that monk's forest abode. Or I see a forest-dwelling monk seated uncomposed in a forest, and I think, presently this reverencer will compose his uncomposed mind, or will preserve a composed state of mind. So I am pleased, Nagita, with that monk's forest abode. Or I see, Nagita, a forest-dwelling monk seated composed in a forest, and I think, presently this reverencer will free the unfreed mind, or will preserve a state of mind which is free. So I am pleased, Nagita, with that monk's forest abode. What time, Nagita, I reach the high road and see no one either in front or behind me, I have leisure even for calls of nature. That's the end of the sutta. So in this last part of the sutta, the Buddha said, sometimes he sees his monk disciples enjoying company, like to sit down and talk with each other, or make merry by poking one another with their fingers, or eating as much as they can and going to sleep after the meal. And then he said, surely these monks cannot enjoy the happiness of seclusion, the happiness of renunciation, in other words, the jhanic bliss. Otherwise they won't be behaving like this. Because one who can obtain the jhanas tends to spend more time in the bliss of jhana, like the Buddha and his Arahant disciples. In the suttas we find the Buddha and his Arahant disciples spend most of their days in jhana, absorbed in jhana, and the Buddha found no fault in that. Then the other part, the Buddha talked about some monk staying in some park, and he can be reached by people, and if people come and visit him and disturb his concentration, then the Buddha is not pleased with that abode of the monk. And whereas the type of abode that the Buddha approved is seen here to be the really secluded place, the forest or cave, etc., where nobody is likely to reach that monk. Then the Buddha approves of this type of total isolation. But it's not it is not easy for a monk to get used to staying alone. And so the Buddha allowed monasteries to be built for monks to stay together. And those monks from there who progressed and wanted to live in seclusion, and then he encouraged the monks to go off and live alone in seclusion. And once a monk has gotten used to living alone in seclusion, he would prefer to stay in seclusion. It's a different type of life. The next sutta is 8.9.87. Monks, the Sangha, if it wish, may turn over the bowl to a lay disciple who is possessed of 8 qualities. Of what 8? He goes about to bring loss to the monks. He goes about to harm them. He goes about to evict them from their dwellings. He reviles and defames them. He causes disunion between monk and monk. He speaks in dispraise of the Buddha. He speaks in dispraise of Dhamma. He speaks in dispraise of the Sangha. Monks, the Sangha, if it wish, may turn down the bowl of a lay disciple who is possessed of these 8 qualities. Now this concerns a Vinaya rule. The Buddha said, if a lay person does any one of these 8 things, he talks bad about the monk, he harms them in some way in their reputation or something, or he tries to chase them out of their dwelling, or he causes disharmony between monk and monk, or he speaks bad about the Buddha, Dhamma or Sangha, and for any one of these reasons, among the Sangha, if it wishes, can decide to turn over the bowl to this lay disciple. That means if the this lay disciple wants to make an offering to the monks, they can turn their bowl upside down so that they don't accept his offerings or her offerings. This is one of the things the Buddha allowed. If certain lay persons, they are harmful to the monk or to the Sangha, then the monk or the Sangha can refuse to accept offerings from that person. If the monk refuses to accept offerings from that person, then that person has no chance to make merit, and that person will suffer for it. The next sutta, 8.9.88. Monks, lay disciples, should they wish, may express disapproval of a monk who is possessed of 8 qualities. What 8? He goes about to bring loss to householders. He goes about to bring harm to householders. He reviles and defames them. He causes disunion or disharmony between householder and householder. He speaks in dispraise of the Buddha or of Dhamma or of the Sangha. They see him in evil haunts. Monks, lay disciples, should they wish, may express disapproval of a monk who is possessed of these 8 qualities. Now this is the reverse of the earlier sutta. This one is that if a monk has certain bad qualities, similar bad qualities as mentioned earlier, that means he brings loss to householders, he brings harm to householders, he reviles and defames them, he causes disharmony between householder and householder, speaks in dispraise of Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, or he goes to, he frequents evil haunts. This last one, he frequents evil haunts, means he often goes to certain places which are not proper for a monk, For example, always going to visit a prostitute, always going to visit a widow, always going to visit an unmarried lady, always going to visit a homosexual or eunuch, and another one always go these. If he does these things, then a lay person can express disapproval. Express disapproval means they bring it up to some senior monk to complain about this monk, or they speak to the monk directly and